For thousands of years in the deserts of Egypt, hidden behind layers of myth and stone, lies a truth more ancient than any empire. The priests of old guarded it with their lives, a forbidden science, a forgotten technology, encoded not in books but etched into the very temples of time. These secrets hint at something that should not exist: knowledge of genetics, atomic structures, and sacred geometry, long before such things were discovered. At the center of it all is a story that refuses to fade, a tale whispered on the walls of a temple in Upper Egypt in a place called Edfu. Situated between Luxor and Aswan, the Temple of Edfu was constructed between the years 237 and 157 before Christ. But the knowledge it protects may be from an age that predates all known civilizations, a time the ancient Egyptians referred to as Zep Tepi, the first time. Inside Edfu, carved in cryptic language, is the story of 7 divine beings. These 7 were not gods in the traditional sense, but sages, engineers of reality, possessing the wisdom to shape sacred cities, build monumental temples, and command forces that modern scientists still struggle to understand. Their origin is lost to time, but the myths agree on one terrifying detail: they were the only survivors of a cataclysmic flood. The flood was not a simple act of nature, it was cosmic punishment. Waves described in inscriptions are not just torrents of water, but primordial forces, massive, unstoppable, divine. They erased an entire world, and from that drowned world, a single island survived long enough to send out the 7. According to the inscriptions, these sages arrived in Egypt after their island, the legendary homeland of the first humans, was swallowed by the sea. Most of its people drowned, but the survivors came ashore in the Nile Valley, where they would become what Egyptians called the builder gods. One of these sages was Thoth, the god of wisdom, writing, and architecture. He did not simply teach, he built. The myths claim he personally oversaw the construction of the first temples, including the Great Pyramids of Giza. And he left behind a mysterious artifact, the Emerald Tablets, said to encode the secrets of immortality and the mechanics of the universe. These ancient builders were not isolated to Egyptian mythology. The same story appears again and again across civilizations separated by oceans and millennia. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform tablets recovered from the ruins of Nineveh tell of a similar deluge. Buried for thousands of years under the dust of Kuyunjik, these 25,000 clay fragments were excavated in the 19th century by Sir Austen Henry Layard. Among them, archaeologists uncovered the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh, part man and part god, seeks the secret of eternal life after witnessing the death of his companion, Enkidu. His quest leads him to the immortal Utnapishtim, a man who survived the Great Flood, warned by the god Ea. Utnapishtim built a massive ship, gathered seeds of life, and escaped the waters, just as Noah would, centuries later, in the biblical narrative. This parallel is not coincidence. The Epic of Gilgamesh predates the Book of Genesis by millennia. In fact, scholars have confirmed that the Genesis flood narrative borrows directly from Mesopotamian texts, which themselves may have originated from even older Egyptian sources. The gods in these stories were not mere allegory. They were powerful beings, possibly mistaken as divine by the survivors of a cataclysmic event they could not comprehend. What if these sages, the 7, were not fictional at all? What if they were advanced humans, or something more, who survived a global catastrophe, carrying the torch of knowledge into the shattered ruins of a post-Diluvian world? George Smith, a humble assistant at the British Museum, was the first to truly understand the significance of the Epic of Gilgamesh. In 1872, he announced the discovery of a flood narrative older than the Bible, etched on stone long before Moses ever wrote Genesis. Skeptics mocked him, but he pressed on, eventually leading an expedition to Nineveh, where he uncovered the missing tablets that completed the story of Utnapishtim. The tale he pieced together was astonishing. Long before the Tigris and Euphrates were known to history, there stood a city called Shuruppak. It was there that gods decided to destroy humanity, weary of its corruption. Only one man was warned, Utnapishtim. Told to abandon his possessions and save life itself, he built a vessel of precise dimensions, filled it with seed and species, and endured the wrath of the gods. This was no myth. In the late 20th century, modern science caught up to the clay tablets. Dr. William Ryan of the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory confirmed through oceanographic data that a cataclysmic flood had indeed occurred around 8,900 years before Christ. Melting glaciers raised sea levels to such an extent that the waters of the Mediterranean broke through the Bosphorus, flooding the freshwater lake that would become the Black Sea. According to his calculations, the deluge poured in with the force of 200 Niagara Falls, raising water levels by 15 centimeters per day, expanding the coastline by 2 kilometers every 24 hours. It was a flood of biblical proportions, because it was the biblical flood. In the year 2000, ocean explorer Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic, discovered ancient structures beneath the Black Sea near modern-day Turkey. Entire settlements lay beneath silt and sea, supporting the idea that a thriving civilization had once lived there before being swallowed whole. Legends around the world speak of a similar event, a great flood, a chosen few, a divine punishment. Over 300 cultures preserve this memory, from the jungles of South America to the highlands of Tibet. The consistency is unnerving. And all these stories point to a single lost source. The Temple of Edfu calls it the Island of the Egg, the place of beginnings. It is said to be the homeland of the 7 sages. It was destroyed in the flood, and from it came the survivors who would teach the art of civilization to the broken remnants of humanity. Were the 7 simply metaphors for natural laws, or were they real beings, remnants of a forgotten era of enlightenment and ruin? Were they survivors of Atlantis? Were they descendants of a pre-Ice Age advanced race? There is no clear answer. But what is certain is that our ancestors went to great lengths to preserve their memory. They carved their names into stone, encoded their knowledge in sacred texts, and aligned their monuments to the stars. The pyramids, the ziggurats, the temples of Egypt, they are more than tombs. They are repositories of knowledge, warnings across time, reminders of a truth we have buried. Perhaps the story of Noah, like the story of Gilgamesh, is not merely about faith. Perhaps it is a veiled account of survival, of memory, of reconstruction after devastation. And if the 7 sages were real, then their story is not just history, it is prophecy. Because civilizations rise and fall, oceans retreat and return, and the secrets they carried may one day be needed again. The ancient world has spoken. The question is, are we listening?